Good morning and welcome to The Point. It is Monday, August 23rd, 2021. Thank you to those of you joining us on the GBN, Grenada Broadcasting Network's Facebook page, the Grenada Broadcasting Network's YouTube channel, the website www.gbn.gd, GBN TV channel 7, 11 and 20. Good morning to the listeners of Classic 105.5, 105.9 and all the folks joining us on Party Grenada and Go to Fet Facebook pages. Always a pleasure to have you joining us for To The Point. This morning, my virtual guest is clinical psychologist Dr. Augustine Panchoo, and every time I need to talk mental health and anxiety and all these things, that's the first person I go to, and I'm always appreciative when he can accommodate me. No matter how short the notice, he always makes himself available, so I appreciate it so very much. So good morning and welcome, Dr. Panchoo, for joining us on To The Point this morning.
Thank you very much, Blossom. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be able to join you and our listening audience on this beautiful Monday morning in August. So thank you for having me.
Appreciate it very much, sir. So, Doc, this morning my idea for the program spurred from, it's a ripple effect from the emergency address by Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell on Friday, announcing some measures that the authorities are hoping would help curtail the further spread of COVID-19. We are dealing with a very serious situation, as I call it, Coconia situation. We now have 39 active COVID-19 cases, 30 of them local, without any travel history. And one of the measures put in place was an extension on the curfew. Curfew has now moved from 12 a.m. to 4 to 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. daily. That I saw one or two posts on social media talking about now they have to mentally prepare once again for more time at home, and they just started to get back into the swing of things, and that is what spurred me to come up with the idea for this program on how people can deal with or readjust to the new protocols, rules and regulations. So having gone from lockdown to a little freedom to now going back to more curfew time or more time to spend inside, how can members of the public readjust our minds mentally, readjust our bodies physically for this period, even if it's 2 weeks or more?
Okay, all right. Well, that's a very good question. So let's start off slowly. We are going to acknowledge that our nation, through the Ministry of Health and all of the auxiliary bodies, including the police, have done a considerable job in maintaining and keeping us safe. I think at the airports and certain parts of the ports, followed by the medical teams, our nurses, our doctors, Ministry of Health personnel. We have done a great job so far, and I think we continue to do a very good job in terms of identifying, limiting, and educating about COVID. I also want to acknowledge that we have had quite a number, close to 20,000 people who have received both doses of the vaccination. And now we have today, on the 23rd, the Pfizer vaccination has been rolled out by the Ministry of Health. So that should spell for those who were critical and or hesitant to take the AstraZeneca, as the 20,000 of us did, they have now the option of the Pfizer vaccination. So a couple of days ago, we had it was brought to the awareness that we had some cases that seemed to suggest that we were bordering community spread, and so the Prime Minister, together with the cabinet, decided that we're moving the curfew from midnight to 9 p.m. To 5 a.m. So that calls for an adjustment in our thought processes, an adjustment in the way we view the restrictions. You have to understand, Blossom, that we Grenadians, I believe, and let's just make it very localized, our people started to get very careless. We really did start to get careless. The carelessness was exemplified, and during the carnival, well, we didn't have carnival, but we did have a Monday and Tuesday in August when people really showed disregard for the COVID protocol. So that, and we're not saying that is what lend itself to the increase in numbers and also what is considered now the community spread. But we started to get very, very careless. You went to some supermarkets, people were not wearing masks. Not that they weren't required; they were always required to. A lot of people on the buses. I do not travel on the buses, but I see them. People on the buses and other forms of transport are not wearing masks. There is total disregard for social distancing and physical distancing. And so here it is that we're tasked now with the new awareness to go to bed early and to curtail on a lot of the activities that we sort of got accustomed to. We were going on down a really great path. Businesses were open, the beaches were open, hotels and restaurants and bars were opened, if you were willing to follow the COVID protocol. We saw a couple social activities, gatherings, churches were allowed to reconvene, funerals and weddings, so life seemed, Blossom, that it was returning to a sort of normalcy, what we expected, what we looked forward to, and we were doing really great. And so now the scare is we have a new variant, the Delta variant of the COVID-19 strand. We have what it appears to be community spread. We still have a lot of people who are reluctant to take the vaccination. And now we have a new curfew protocol. That is requiring us to now put a break on the way we were going. And I don't know what it is going to look like for school, because school is getting ready to reopen in the next 2 weeks, Blossom. So that in and of itself is going to require some deep thought and critical thinking processes for us to be able to open school or reopen school and get the ball rolling. I'm hoping, Blossom, against all odds, that the spread is identified through contact tracing, and that we are able to lay a hold and a hand on the source of this new spread and the increase in positive cases. I am really hoping, and I think the medical professionals, competent as they are working feverishly to ensure that we do have a reasonable knowledge of where this came from and how it is that we're going to stop it and to prevent it from becoming really a pandemic in Grenada. It's worldwide pandemic, but in Grenada we've been lucky of the number of cases we've had. Every now and again we have a couple active ones. This week is the most we have had of critically active cases since we started over a year and a half ago in monitoring COVID. So what is it going to require, Blossom? It is going to require us to rethink the way we do things. Pull out the masks, pull out the hand sanitizers, start limiting the number of people that are riding in your transport or in the bus. I think all of the businesses are going to be cognizant of this new development, and they're going to insist that all of the COVID protocols are maintained, in addition to restricting the number of people in the supermarket at any one time. So think of it, all of these new adjustments are coming overnight, because we moved from Thursday to Friday, and within a couple hours we were we were forced, as it were, to recognize a new protocol. So all of the plans, think about it. I attended a wedding on Saturday, and that was, right there in the new format of curfew and the new format of COVID protocol. And I had to stay away in 100 meters away from the happenings, because the wedding required us to follow the protocol, and I was okay with it. However, you could see on the faces, and that's I think that's the pertinent part of the question you asked. You could see on the faces of many of the patrons, many of the family. I mean, think about it. You can only have 20 people surrounding the minister and the bride and groom. Now, the bridal party alone is close to 20. So that gives you all family, the mom and the dad and the grandparents. They have to stay way away while they look on at weddings. And it's going to be so for funerals. So conscientiously, psychologically, and emotionally, we have to make these adjustments to cope. And I really want us, Blossom, to be able to do just more than coping. Coping is like you accepting the bad and just working with it until it works its way. This time I am hoping that we are going to make conscientious choices, conscientious decisions to get vaccinated, to follow the protocol, to obey the curfew hours, so that we can get a grip on the current situation.
Is this going to be an easier transition compared to the early days of protocols and lockdowns? An easier way to readjust ourselves?
You know what? The human being, Blossom, is very resilient. We are a resilient species, okay? It's not just Grenadian that's resilient. Human beings are resilient. And yes, the very first time in March, April last year were very difficult days and months ahead for us. And I think what has happened is that this time around, it is going to be less traumatic, less disturbing, because people already got a sense, and the brain has already captured and wired itself to wear the mask. Many people were having it, faced with difficulty wearing the mask. It seemed as though some people, especially people who had medical conditions, we have COPD, we have sleep apnea, we have other breathing discomfort and ailments, and people were required to wear the mask. And so the brain started to make it familiar, wiring the neurons so that it can accept the limitations and the restrictions that were placed on us. But then we started to lapse, and so the brain started to now fade away the restrictions and put in place now freedom. And in the midst of, as we were getting that kind of freedom, here comes COVID again. And so it is less traumatic on the brain to readjust to the new protocols. So last time in 2020, it was really, really difficult. We saw people who were in quarantine, jumping the fence and running away. They couldn't even stay a week. These were desperate times for us. And I'm hoping this time that we have learned the lesson and that the brain can now assimilate the new requirements.
Another situation that is creating anxiety among members of the public, a year and a half later, we are still dealing with the issue of misinformation. And
Yes.
There's still misinformation going around, and that is not doing well for a lot of people. To hear the misinformation, and it's creating fear and panic in so many, and then for others it's like hearing misinformation and other information, and they're like in a space of they don't know what to do. How can we deal with that situation as well mentally?
All right. Blossom, there's a plethora. That is just a lot, multifaceted pieces of misinformation. Last night, someone sent me a voice recording of a if you listen to it and you're not aware, you will start panicking. It was maybe about 3 or 4 minutes long, but it was someone, a male voice, articulating that the government of Grenada is panicking and the Ministry of Health has no resources and we are in a state of panic and God help Grenada. And I'm thinking, where is this coming from? Who is sitting behind a computer on a YouTube or a voice recorder, recording these and sending it out to so many people, vulnerable people, people who are already skeptical from 1.5 years ago when the pandemic came. People who are still listening to the voices and still hearing the residual echo of people like Trump and others who abdicated their responsibility to educate the masses and the population and allow this misinformation to flow and affect people, vulnerable people. Let me tell you something, Blossom. There are many, many, many Grenadians who are taking Facebook as gospel. They're taking Instagram. They're taking word of mouth of their neighbor. There are so many doctors, Facebook doctors and Facebook epidemiologists and Facebook nurses and pharmacists. There are so many Facebook psychologists and therapists and counselors that it is mind-boggling how we survive. And so the misinformation takes on a multifaceted way. One, we have people who have claimed or are claiming that they do not want to put foreign substance in the body, untested, and etc. Here is what the research says. I just read a research published. I'm trying to recall who published it. But so far, after almost a year of the vaccinations being out there are yet to be established long-term effects of the vaccination. In other words, people have the immediate effects of getting chills and fever and swelling and pain, which is normal for most vaccinations. But there are no medically established long-term effects of that. But people still continue that. Then there are the religious section of our community who think that somehow the mark of the beast is in the vaccination, and then when you are vaccinated, you are going to get a chip, and that chip is going to be what establishes you whether you're the Antichrist or Lucifer. And I have no idea what that is. I'm just babbling what they're saying, but I'm talking about the misinformation that is out there. And then there are those who just think that the vaccinations are too new and too current and too rushed to be anything good and far from the truth. I want to establish a fact. The fact is, COVID-19 is only a new strain of the SARS virus. In other words, we have had significant upper respiratory distress diseases long time. So SARS have been studied, these diseases have been studied long. So when COVID came, it was just trying to figure out the new strand of the SARS virus, of that respiratory distress virus. And so the vaccine that might look as though it was rushed is really not rushed. It has been in the making for a long time. People didn't just get up and say, okay, let's put things together for COVID-19. No, the research were well established already. So the misinformation that is out there, and the last piece of the misinformation I want to address is that, yes, there is no question that if we have an outbreak of COVID significantly enough in Grenada that requires hospitalization or acute treatment and rehabilitation and ventilation and etc., that our healthcare system is going to be really put at a strain because we do not have many beds. And so, but people are construing and saying that we are in a state of panic. And I even heard one person said that that's why the Prime Minister left Grenada and ran away. You know, it is so absurd with the kind of misinformation that we are hearing out there. So I really am glad that you were able to address it through a question. And I'm sure that there are others who are listening who probably would like to ask a question or two about the misinformation and maybe even more knowledgeable about the misinformation that is out there and are willing to talk about it on this program.
Dealing with the effects of all that's happening, especially with COVID-19, of course, there are other things that people are dealing with. Do you think professional help should be the primary place that people seek to deal with it? Or is there another way they can do it? Because the truth and the fact is, not everybody could afford, first of all, to seek professional help.
Yeah. Very, very good and pertinent question, Blossom, for this program. There is no question. And let me go back to a question you asked me, whether or not this time around, whether or not to make a comparison, really, that's what I did. Between a year and a half ago, when we had the introduction of COVID-19 and all the protocols and restrictions, and how difficult it was for our population, is it going to be comparable this time around to the last time? And I said this time will be a little easier because our brain sensitivity have already started to process the protocols for lockdown and restrictions. But even though it is going to be easier for us this time around, Blossom, it is not going to be without a lot of heartache. People do not like to be restricted, whether it is for a good or not. People interpret restriction with resistance. In other words, why? Why do I have to? I am okay. And everybody, if you were to ask everybody in Grenada, everybody would say, I am okay. Whether or not they are susceptible or vulnerable to COVID infection, they think they're okay. Nobody thinks that they will spread it. Nobody thinks that he or she will get it. And so what is going to happen now is that it is going to require us to dig a little deeper into the resources that we have available. Churches are going to be a good place, Blossom, to have people reassure their faith, limited social interaction, but at least churches are open. When we started last time, churches were really shut down. And so even prayer and fellowship and worship was a challenge for many people. This time we have it. It's just that we have to follow the protocol. There are medical doctors and there are therapists and counselors out there, whether it's the Ministry of Youth, the Ministry of Education, Social Development, the Ministry of Social Development and Community Empowerment. And then there are quite a few private practitioners who offer therapeutic services and counseling services. But to answer your question now, specifically, yes, at this time, there are many people who are going to find refuge in seeking professional help, because the way things are going, the uncertainty, and that's another piece of the puzzle. We talked about it slightly already. As we continue to see the uncertainty, as we continue to feel the uncertainty, as cases probably increases, because today, I'm sure we are going to get some more results, and chances are we will move from 39 to maybe a higher number. I am praying that it will be reduced. but people are starting to panic. You hear conversations, close the ports, close, because we were doing so well when people weren't coming. Well, that had its difficulty because of travel restrictions. People were stuck in certain countries and couldn't return. And additionally, people couldn't travel to see their loved ones. And it created a lot of anxiety for people. This time around, I am thinking that if we can get control over the spread and over the reason why we have 30 people, which appear to be community spread, if we really get down to the contact tracing and see where it comes from, it's going to help Grenadians breathe a little better, and as a result, maybe need professional help less than we needed it a year and a half ago.
Let's take a break, Dr. Panchoo, and then come back and field some questions. The phone has started to ring. This is To The Point, speaking with clinical psychologist Dr. Augustine Panchoo, how to deal or how to readjust with the new COVID-19 protocols as Grenada's epidemiological situation unfolds. This is To The Point on Classic and GBN. We will be right back. Welcome back to The Point, speaking with clinical psychologist Dr. Augustine Panchoo, looking at readjusting to COVID-19 protocols as the situation unfolds. Let's go to the phone lines, and then I'm going to give her the information. The person has been on hold a little while, so let's start there. Good morning, caller.
Morning, Blossom. Morning, Dr. Panchoo.
Morning.
I feel saddened because I don't think we want the whole truth. We talk selectively about what we want to talk about. Like last night, there was a very inspiring presentation by Dr. Belva Bowles of Louisiana, and the session was moderated by Beverly Sinclair, of our own. There were a few, I don't even think there was a journalist present there. And what he said would contradict some of what Dr. Panchoo is saying. I'm not saying that he's lying, because some of the information, when we talk about misinformation, some of the information that are being given by authorities are not accurate, consistent with the same kind of science as it was. And I challenge anybody openly to go to the recording and tell me any aspect of what the doctor said is false. In fact, she gave suggestions what teachers and others could do to protect their children as school about to open and all of that. She gave practical suggestions. In addition to people using, taking the vaccine. What is happening now? We are not telling people what other things they can do and we are only banking on vaccination in Massachusetts. Because what's happening in Massachusetts right now, the CDC is changing their pronouncement, because in one of the provinces there or county, majority of people there who have been infected were fully vaccinated.
Okay.
Why should we have no? Listen, just give me here's the problem. Give me a minute or so, please. I wouldn't be unreasonable. Why it is that on our airwaves we haven't heard the ailment of Reverend Jesse Jackson, who took sick yesterday. He and his wife, they took the vaccine. We don't hear these kind of things. They took the both vaccine, and they are hospitalized at the moment. So when we're trying to feed people on the vaccine thing, there are other things that people can do. And there are also the way we are approaching things are not helpful.
Okay.
Because we need to get everybody on board.
Thank you very much.
We are pelting stone at different people.
Thank you very much. Doc?
Yeah. Well, thank you, caller. I was hearing an echo. Okay. So I did not see that interview with Beverly and our good doctor. But you may be right. You may be right. There is no question that it is possible for someone to take the vaccine and become infected and or a carrier of the COVID virus. Remember that each of the vaccine, whether it is the AstraZeneca, the Pfizer, Moderna, or the Johnson & Johnson, there is a percentage efficacy. And what that means is that whether it is 80%, 90%, 95%, it means that there are chances that the vaccine may not work for someone or a certain, a small percentage of the people that are going to take it. Because all of the clinical trials show that none of the 4 vaccinations that are currently available have provided or were able to provide 100% safeguard for people. And I know people will say, okay, so if it's only providing 97% efficacy, why do I need to take it? Well, yeah, because it limits the number of people that will be able to spread it and or get infected. Yes, it is. It might be true, and it might be true that somebody who took the vaccine will get sick, maybe be hospitalized, but the vaccine is really important. Now watch this. It's difficult to just go, for you to say, okay, the vaccine is important and take it. No, and I'm not an epidemiologist. I do not hold a master's degree in public health. So I cannot speak to the truism and give you all the facts about the vaccine. I'm not a medical doctor. But watch this. What the research is showing is that the people who are vaccinating have less of the effects, the direct effects of COVID. Now, one of the things that the caller said, and I thank him for saying that, is that in addition to the vaccine, there are many other things that we could do. And I applaud you for saying that, because we need to reiterate and we need to zone in on the many things that we can do in addition to vaccination. And I do not want to sound as though I am the mouthpiece or the champion for vaccination. I was one of the very first people to take the AstraZeneca in Grenada. As soon as it got rolled out, I went in and I took mine. But I don't want to be the mouthpiece necessarily. I want to say that there are lots of other things that we can do to build our immune system. I think Grenadians and people in the Caribbean have survived the virus and its devastating effects because we choose to be a healthy people. We choose to be a people who eat well and enjoy the herbs and the many herbs that we have in Grenada. That can boost our immune system. And I think the stronger immune system that we have whether it is a citric acid, the citrus found in all of the fruits and vegetables or the herbs, all of the leaves, the coralia, and I understand the breadfruit leaf and the avocado seeds and the mango leaves and the soursop leaves, all these things that we grind and we put in our smoothie and we just drink that stuff. I think those are. So in addition to vaccination, I promote good health, but I also believe that through social distancing, the wearing of the mask and the hand sanitization kills the virus and the potency of the virus. As a result, we need to look at a holistic approach now to ridding ourselves of COVID. And that's the way we will survive, because if we just follow protocol and we don't take the vaccine, we still leave ourselves susceptible and vulnerable. We take the vaccine and we refuse to do the protocol and the social physical distancing, we still expose ourselves. So thank you, caller, for that question.
Somebody on WhatsApp says, I am not hearing about the hotels that are performing their own testing. Why is it only the locals in between testing positive and not any of the visitors? I know why the police is hesitant in getting on the buses and ticketing the drivers and conductors that are not wearing masks. It is because police own buses on the road. I still don't trust the tests they are doing, so instead of 48 hours, they are given the fully vaccinated, increase the time of quarantine.
Okay. And maybe we might need to go on to that because we had 7 days. 7 days with a negative PCR. You would come into the country with a 3-day negative PCR, and then you stay in quarantine until 7 days, and at the end of day 4 or day 5, they will test you, and if you're negative, they'll let you go a day or two later. With the vaccinations, it was a kind of plus that because of the research around the vaccinations. So if you were vaccinated, when you return home with a negative PCR, you would be tested again at the airport, which is like 3 or 4 days later after your initial test for coming in, and you stay in quarantine for 2 days or 48 hours, most likely. It may mean that if we see evidence that this 48 hours is not working, I am sure the Minister for Health and the health authorities through the minister for not the minister but the chief medical officer will make a decision to increase the time spent in quarantine. I don't know. I can't talk about why the police are reluctant. I don't know that they are reluctant. I thought that they were doing their job in terms of monitoring the conductors and the drivers and ensuring that they have masks. But there again, Blossom, people, we do not want to resort to a police state. Of course, Grenada is somewhat, a law. We depend on the laws for our survival and to keep peace and order. But you don't want a police to have to ride and to stop you every mile of your trip so that to remind you that you need to wear the mask. People have to be self-conscious. Grenadians, we have drivers, conductors. We have to become more responsible. We have to spray, we have to sanitize before our passengers get into the buses. We have to ensure that they keep the mask on. And conversations. People, I hate this thing, with a passion. People will have to remove their mask to engage in conversation for their trip on the bus or on the plane. Please keep quiet. Just, you get on the bus, you keep quiet. Just shut up. The only time you should talk is when you're asking the conductor to drop you or to knock. And you should just keep your peace because the virus is spread through droplets. And if you don't speak, you have reduced the incidence, also the likelihood of getting droplets everywhere. But that's a good posting there on the chat.
Good morning, caller.
Yes, good morning.
Morning.
I would like to ask Mr. Panchoo a question. If you have any research or done any studies, have you know that Barbados have signed in 1977 on the biological weapon, which the vaccine is. It kills the cells in our human being. It don't prevent the coronavirus, but what it do, it kill our own cells slowly. That's why you have people with clot blood dying. Have you done any research? As a man who faces the media and come in and tell people about the vaccinated is not 100%. It doesn't prevent. You could take the vaccine and still have the disease. I have done research. You take the vaccine, you have disease. You catch the virus. Then you can spread it. You can spread it while you have the vaccine. It is said that we in Grenada, our authority have given who take the vaccine 24-hour quarantine. That's why we have a massive spread of the virus of people coming to who have taken the vaccine. I will need you to do some research. Come, I don't know what year Grenada signed on the biological weapon, but it's there on the net. You could search it. There are doctors speaking out against it. Then Grenada signed on the ICCPR, the human rights, which is not mandatory. And I have facts to prove to you that the government is telling the institute that their staff have to be vaccinated. I have letters. What the government has write with government stamp on it. Can you tell me why the government is so pushing the vaccine to the private entity and then themselves not being? Can we sanitize the atmosphere? Can we sanitize the atmosphere? The mask is made of fiberglass and it's dangerous. A mask has to be changed every 20 minutes. Have you all aware of that? Have you done the research? Come and talk to me where that is concerned. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Doc?
Well, that caller seemed to be well educated in his dogma. I don't know. I have not researched. I don't know that I need to research what it is that he's talking about. I am dealing with the currency of an epidemic. There is no question that biology does play a great part in the disease. It's a biological agent. It's spread through the system of biology. It affects our physiological state, which is our biological state. And if you are adversely infected and affected, you can die, which kills the biological state. The last piece of the question, the second piece, is that why government? I have no idea. I do not work with and or for the government. So he will have to ask that question at a later date to people who have the responsibility of governing this country. Thank you, Blossom.
All right, let me go to WhatsApp. Somebody on WhatsApp asks, come WhatsApp, work with me. Hold on, WhatsApp sticking a little bit. Somebody on WhatsApp says, I don't think the government should do this alone, but train some people in respective villages to help out. So make them feel they are part of the process of the solution. What do you think, Dr. Panchoo? So let me read it over. I don't think the government should do this alone, but train some people in respective villages to help out. Make them feel they are a part of the solution. What do you think, Dr. Panchoo?
Absolutely, absolutely. Whomever asked this question is onto what we call, social partnering, community organization and partnering. There is no question that if we were able to target, and I don't think the time has passed, because we have about 70,000 people in Grenada, adults in Grenada, maybe more, who should be vaccinated if we're talking vaccination. In addition to everything, we have only had 20,000 people so far. So we are like 1/7 away, just in terms of numbers. So we still have an additional 50,000 people. That's half of our population who should be vaccinated. So the question the person asked here is, can we partner with influential community leaders? And I say yes. We should and we could, because there are many influential people at the community-based level who can dialogue and who can encourage and who can work with other people to provide better information. In that way, we'll have more people in the community who are feeding off Facebook and who are feeding off all the other misinformation, and they're not getting it straight. So it is not too late. We have 50,000 people who need to be vaccinated, and we need the social partners and the community partners.
Doc, parents are preparing for the reopening of school in 2 weeks, and I know there are parents who are anxious about what would take place. The next update the Prime Minister promised would come after September 3rd, thereabout, 2 weeks after the latest protocols have been implemented, and that's just about 3 days before the new school term begins. So how can parents deal with that anxiety? There are even children who understand the situation. How can they deal with that too, preparing for the start of the new school year, especially those preparing for CPEA and CXC?
Yeah, and it's going to take us back to the trend of thought processes that surround school. Remember last year September when we had to decide whether or not we stagger, how were we going to do school. I think the school system, the educational system, survived last year, albeit that we didn't have these massive graduations and we didn't have a lot of we resorted to a lot of online teaching, and we had some challenges there with the technology and the internet, etc. But this time, we have all of these in place. We have school reopening, and we have anxious parents who are wondering, is it safe? And so far, that's the tricky piece, that so far, none of the vaccinations have been, the clinical trials have been done with children. So I know children are going to be vulnerable. Really and truly, there aren't many children who have been infected outside of children probably who are infected with where the family is infected and spread it with them. But I share the concern of parents, Blossom. This is going to be a tricky piece for them to overcome and to navigate, because the uncertainty about the community spread, whether it's community spread, where it is coming from the mass super spreader events we had, Carnival, prior Carnival, etc., the days for Carnival, or the days that were taken away from us that were designated previously for Carnival. What I'm saying here is that I empathize with parents, because there is no question that they are going to be ambivalent, they are going to be concerned, maybe anxious, maybe petrified, even maybe wondering now, how is it that I can tap into online total virtual learning for my children or my child? So it may boil down to that, but I think what the Prime Minister and the health officials are saying, we're going to give this new protocols and contact tracing 2 weeks, so that by September 3rd, when he does come, whomever come to address the nation on COVID, will have some good news for us, so that students and teachers and parents can feel at ease and comfortable to be able to return to school. If not, we are going to go back to virtual learning, I'm sure, and just make it stronger, more robust, and more efficacious, so that we can really have our students who are preparing for exams, the CPA and CXC, can really be more prepared this time, so that they'll do better. You know, it's really going to be a challenging time for us, Blossom.
As we prepare to wind down, Doc, what should be, I don't think it's a blanket assistance for everybody, but maybe one of the main things that people should do preparing for the next 2 weeks at least, dealing with the ever-evolving COVID situation in Grenada, the rest of the world. How can we all mentally cope?
Moving from almost a state of freedom to do a lot of things, the beaches, the rivers, the hikings, the buses, the activities, the bars, the the restaurants, even sporting activities. I enjoyed a couple of games of soccer. All of these were bringing people back to a sense of wow, a sense of exhilaration and freedom. And so the next 2 weeks is going to be really difficult in the sense that people must now curtail all of these. And so you ask, well, why and how? Well, how are we going to cope? Well, here are some of the things that we're going to have to do. We are going to have to we're going to have to come back to a sense of carefulness, a sense of prayer, a sense of understanding of life and what is life. I think, Blossom, a lot of times people just don't. We can be cornered into a sense of selfishness instead of selflessness. And so we have to start thinking now of other people. And so my heart goes out to people who, the 39 families who are now dealing with the active cases of COVID, and then the 30 cases of what appears to be community spread. People are going to start pulling away from these families. They're going to start pulling away from these friends because they don't know. And when we don't know, we become anxious, and it doesn't do well for our mental health. Emotionally, we fall prey to diseases. And watch this, Blossom. There's a corresponding, and I want to remind us of that as we face the next 2 weeks. The more anxious we become, the more worried and the more stressed we become. Our body continues to produce stress hormones, which is adrenaline and cortisol. What they do in our bodies is to help us to prepare for the uncertainty. But in copious measures, if our body is in a state of always producing stress hormone, it adds up to toxicity in our system. This is what gives us headache and gives us stomach ulcers and causes us to have diarrhea and to feel fatigue and want to stay in bed. So there is a corresponding relationship between stress and the way the body perceives it. And what we need to do for the next 2 weeks is to find time to relax, find time to do things, find times to be creative, find times to meditate, find times to exercise, even if we have to do it in our yards and the playing fields are no longer available. But find time to take walks, to do things that can promote and have the body release the endorphins and the dopamine and the serotonin levels so that we can feel happy and enjoy, even though we have a lot of restrictions for the next 2 weeks, still be able to enjoy life. Yeah.
I like that. Thank you very much, Dr. Panchoo. Always appreciate when you can share with us how to mentally deal with situations. Appreciate you very much. Continue to stay safe and all the best. Enjoy the rest of your Monday.
All right. Thank you to you also, Blossom. Thank you, and stay safe, and to all of our listeners.
Thank you. Have a good one. Clinical psychologist Dr. Augustine Panchoo. The next 2 weeks at least, we have to readjust our minds, readjust ourselves as we go through these trying times in relation to Grenada's COVID-19 status. According to the latest dashboard released by the Ministry of Health yesterday, as of 4 p.m. yesterday, Grenada has recorded 222 COVID-19 cases overall since March 2020. We currently have 39 active cases, 8 of them imported, 1 import-related, meaning a contact of one of the imported cases, and there are 30 local cases, meaning Grenadians without travel history. So please continue to stay safe. Those of you in buses, even if you are the lone person wearing a mask, if that's what you need to do, that's what you need to do. I've heard somebody say to me, I'm not wearing a mask because nobody else in the bus wearing mask and everybody watching me. Let them watch you strange. Let them watch you strangely. Just protect yourselves. Please continue to be safe. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. Joseph is up next with Mid-Morning Buzz. I'll be back tomorrow morning, God willing. Bye-bye, everybody.